Hello everybody and welcome back to QuipScope. It's the show where we take a look at a new game that's come out recently and talk about how we're finding it. My name is Peter.
And my name is Ben.
And today, oh boy, Ben, how long have you been waiting for Final Fantasy VII to come back?
I mean, a long old time. I didn't even think it would happen.
No.
Full stop.
Yeah.
And then we got that PS3 sort of tease from, I don't know if you remember that, from sort of back early in the days of the PS3. They showed a sort of tech demo of what the opening cinematic sequence of Final Fantasy VII would look like using the power of PS3, and that got everyone very excited, but ultimately led nowhere. And then they said, we're not going to do it, because if we remake our best Final Fantasy game, then that's sort of a self-admission that we can't do any better by making new Final Fantasy games. And then they said, actually, you know what? We are going to do it, but we're going to give it to a studio that's not got a great pedigree, and then we're going to scrap it, and then it's going to go silent for a while, and then it's finally going to come out sort of 5 or 6 years later. So the answer, Peter, is a long time.
Yeah, and even now it's coming out episodically, so you can't even yet play the full thing. But
I can't.
That aside, it's arrived. You have played the first maybe hour-ish. That's including the chunk that you'd already played in demo form, both at EGX and just the demo, right? So, yeah, is an hour about accurate before we go further?
I would say so, yeah. I will also very quickly say, because I specifically decided to gather footage from after where the demo ends, because everybody who's interested in seeing that has seen that. However, if you want to avoid absolutely all spoilers whatsoever, there are a couple of cinematics I'm going to cut around. I'll try and keep it focused on gameplay, but obviously I've got it early. A lot of people have got it early because of the current pandemic, so they've sent out physical copies early. I've had mine for a few days. Only, as you said, had a chance to play a little bit of it. But if you're waiting to play the game and you don't want to see it, then maybe just listen instead of watch. How's that?
Yeah, that's a good idea. It's a podcast. It's a quip. I don't know.
QuipleJump pod.
Yeah,
Podscope.
Yes, something like that. So, what are your first impressions of the new bit that you hadn't already played?
So, it's a pretty game. Yeah. We already knew that, of course. It's a very beautiful game. It became immediately obvious, and I think it's already actually been confirmed, but this is just sort of an aside beyond how I'm fighting the game. 2 discs.
Yeah?
It's on two discs, which I've never had as a PlayStation gamer before.
Yeah, what a throwback.
There's a data disc, which it installs from onto your PS4, and then you use the second one to just play the game, which I have never experienced before playing PlayStation games. I know they did that on Xbox 360 with a few games, but I've never had that before. That's a novelty for me.
You've never had it on any PlayStation generation or just recent ones?
In terms of you need it's not that it's
Right,
not like the original
point.
Final Fantasy games where it's switched to disc 2.
Yeah.
Here is an installation
Just
disc because we couldn't fit it on one.
Right.
So yeah, that was a little bit fun. Also, it takes bloody ages to install. But anyway, so they immediately deviate from the sort of not narrative, but from what you might expect. And I think this is what has been promised numerous times: is that it's Final Fantasy VII, but not as you've seen it before. There are going to be new twists, new surprises, new dialogue. It's not just a remake beat for beat. It's going to approximately follow the same story, but outside of that, pretty much all bets are off. Locations are similar, obviously. They still go to the same places, and as I said, they hit the same plot beats, but how they get there is different now. So it is like experiencing a brand new game, which is very exciting. However, it also throws in a few curveballs because you walk around a corner and then it's like, oh, what on earth is this character doing here already? Hello? Why is this? Whole new interactions. So it's not as lovely as it would be for them to have taken, the Nintendo approach with just remaking Pokemon Red and calling it Pokemon Fire Red, and it's identical in layout and mechanics. They have, this is a new game that follows one of the best Final Fantasy storylines ever told, which is a good thing. However, there are people who aren't going to like that because, you know, this was a case. It's one of the most beloved games of all time. This is a damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of situation.
Yeah.
Where they can't really win, but luckily the combat is outstanding. Lots of people have already experienced that. I've just got to the bit where you can equip materia, which was a big part of Final Fantasy VII, the original one, which is sort of your magic. And depending on what weapons you have, they have materia slots, and some of them are connected and some of them aren't. So if you were to put fire in one that was connected to the all materia, that would mean that you can cast fire on all enemies, and so on. So there was all sorts of, you know, chaining different magic together and stuff. So I haven't got anything too comprehensive in terms of materia, and certainly in terms of materia slots, I'm just working with the Buster Sword, which just has 2 unconnected slots. But it's starting to give you materia and let you equip it, so I don't know how deep that goes, but that's nice to see that make a return. I was glad to see that, and it has sort of a more practical use for some of the old materia. There's one that I picked up, I can't quite remember the name, but it's sort of like a deadly dodge or counter-attack or something like that, so that when you roll, when you're in combat, because it's all, you know, real time now, when you roll, you automatically just sort of swipe out as you do it, so any enemies nearby get hit by your sword as you roll. So there's various things like that where materia takes on a far more practical role in combat. You know, as I said, it looks beautiful and it sounds amazing, and I keep thinking about it all day, every day, but there's just too many games, and I'm going to try and finish off the ones I've already started before I go any deeper into this one.
Oof, because you want to invest your full, all your resources, all your mental and time resources in this one when you can.
Exactly.
Well, going back just briefly to the whole thing of whether a company should do a full-on identical remake, or, you know, something quite, you know, exploring new variations and things. You know, if you look at something like the Resident Evil 2 remake, that one of the things that did very well was not being a like-for-like thing. Now, from what you've said, it sounds like Final Fantasy seems to have gone even more off-piste than Resi 2 did. But in any case, one of the biggest triumphs of Resi 2, I think, was that, and it worked well in the horror genre particularly, was taking moments where you know that, for example, a licker is going to be on the ceiling, and then when you round that corner and realise, oh god, the licker's not here. What? When is the licker going to attack me? And then instantly, you know, you're on edge. So I think there's a lot to be said for playing with expectations. As I say, it works very well in a horror context in that kind of way, because you're like, oh, where's that scary monster that's supposed to be here? But horror or not, you know, I think it kind of allows you to almost go back to the day when maybe you first played Final Fantasy VII or something like that, and to just be pleasantly surprised by new things, and to not just think, oh, well, you know, it's like when you watch your favourite movie for like the 90th time and you can probably almost read along with the script. So I think there's something to be said for the fact that they've you know, deviated a little, and you know, your expectations aren't always going to be it's not always going to follow the script that you're expecting in your head, sort of thing. So that's Definitely. A good thing, I would say.
Definitely. Resi 2, of course, was phenomenal, and as you said, like it did have the benefit of being set in exactly the same place, and they could use the same layout and stuff. Final Fantasy, you know, these guys, obviously they've had to come at it from a different approach, because we were dealing with painted backgrounds and stuff.
The perspective has changed,
Exactly. It's now a third-person action game, so there's literally no way, without looking really weird, that they could have completely remade this in exactly the same style. So, yeah, I mean, their hand was definitely forced, obviously, to have to change things up. But as you said, I think that's a good thing, because it is like experiencing it for the first time. And as I said, you know the plot beats, you know the characters, you know what's going to happen, but you don't necessarily know how you're going to get there and what's going to happen along the way. And that's quite exciting. And then in between these sections, you've just got this brilliant combat that, I feel like anybody, as I said at the beginning, who wants to have experienced it probably has played the demo now, so they know what the combat's like. It's that, nothing's changed from that. I haven't got any summon materia or anything like that because I'm still pretty early on. But it's different, but it's good. I will say it does seem to be quite linear at the moment, and I know that's because you're in Midgar, and that whole section, that whole first disc of the game was quite linear in that you were sort of shuffled along with some light open exploration in sort of suburban environments, but it was quite linear, and you were forced down a path towards the next story stuff, but it never felt linear. I will say it definitely feels more linear after 20 years of game innovation, 23 odd years of game innovation, and also looking the way it does. And you can look at a map, you can see that it might not be a corridor in the traditional sense, but you're definitely running down one path from start to end, fighting things along the way. Now, I don't know how that bodes for the rest of the game. I'm obviously very early on, and it's not bothering me in the slightest because holy crap in heck, my dude, it's Final Fantasy VII Remake, but that remains to be seen if it starts to wear as the game goes on. I really hope it doesn't, but I feel like I need to mention that there is definitely linearity to this game beyond what you might expect from, it's just the first disc of Final Fantasy, it's quite linear anyway.
Right. One thing worth asking, I think, and I don't think we may have touched on this when we talked about your previous forays into this game, your taster sessions. Whenever you're dealing with a remake, particularly something that, as a fan of a certain franchise, as you are with Final Fantasy, I think one thing that can be difficult for a developer to get right is how to handle music in terms of whether they remaster it, completely redo some of the melodies and change things up entirely, or as they've done with Spyro, leave the option in there for the original music. And Final Fantasy, of course, as a franchise, has some wonderful scores throughout the series. How are you finding the soundtrack?
Well, citation needed, but I believe the composer of the original game is back in. I want to say Nobuo Uematsu. I'm really sorry. Like, I've seen it written down throughout my entire life, but that is my first time attempting to pronounce it. Because that soundtrack is obviously just phenomenal, and it's this is iconic. The original one I'm talking about. It is iconic, yeah. Like, I can listen to that, and I have, over the course of my, over the last 20 years or so, I have listened to that soundtrack just on my iPod or whatever it was at the time, my Zune, my CD player.
Well, there's a bunch of tracks that I know, even never having played the game. There's like I could probably sing 3 or 4 of the bigger tracks from Final Fantasy VII. Obviously, Sephiroth's theme, and some of the theme. Yeah, and some of the combat music as well. Like, it definitely it's one of those games, isn't it? That anyone who is remotely into video gaming has probably heard some of it before, even if they've not played the game.
Definitely is. I mean, he's come back, I believe. Again, citation needed. At the very least, basically, they've remastered the entire soundtrack with a full orchestral arrangement. And if it wasn't already iconic enough in its original sort of synthy ways, just all composed on a sort of keyboard, basically, it sounds incredible now. There are definitely modern spins on some of the songs. Some of the more subtle background music, you will hear sort of stings and little excerpts of music you remember, sort of like, oh yeah, there's that. But definitely the character themes, the main menu theme, all of it is just updated. And so, from what I understand, there's like 40 odd hours of soundtrack in this game, which does not surprise me at all. Yeah. But I will say actually, because I got the sort of deluxe special edition, it came with a taster soundtrack, I think is what it was called. Right. And it has 10 songs on it, and I don't know, it feels kind of cheap. Like, I feel like I want the whole soundtrack, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's all they could fit on the CD. But who's to say?
Exactly. Maybe that's why it's a maybe that's why the installation disc was required for the full game, just because it's got 40 hours of soundtrack on it. But
absolutely mad. But yeah, it's really good so far. I think people are going to be very excited when they get their hands on it. If they haven't already, I know a lot of people have. But those are my thoughts on the first little bit of Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Well, I'm very, very happy for you.
Oh, thank you.
I've had my remake itches scratched already by Activision over the past few years, so it's nice to know that one of your favourite games of all time is here now.
It is. It's an exciting time. We'll see how it holds up over the next sort of 30 hours or so. I understand the game will run you about 30 to 45 hours if you want to do everything, so that's a good old length there. Lovely.
Well, thank you very much for your thoughts, and thank you, audience, for listening/watching. Let us know your thoughts on Final Fantasy VII Remake in the comments below, and stick with us for more QuipScopes as and when dem new games come at us.
Yeah.
Right, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And I nearly went without doing a quip.
Oh no.
That's the USP. People wouldn't watch this show without the quips at the end.
They wouldn't. They absolutely wouldn't.
Final Fantasy VII Remake. More like Final Fantasy Heaven Remake, am I right?
Oh. Final Fantasy, more like it's finally fantasying. Right. It's finally fantasying right up here in my house where I live.
Wow. Yeah. No, Final Fantasy, more like Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy, seeing it for the first time.
Yeah.
Final
Fantasy VII. More like Final Fantasy IV, because we thought because it was taking so long that we thought, we'll see that on we'll see that on PS7 probably, but we saw it on PS4.
Yeah. Final Fantasy VII, more like Final Fantasy 2.3 recurring or something, because it's only like a third of the game or something, because it's like this episodic thing.
That's
good.
Amazing. That's good. I like that one.
That's the end of
All right,
the video.
See you
Bye.
Bye everyone.